Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we've got a couple of games for you guys in the Kansas. We're going to showcase a little bit of what I like to call doing everything I can and trying to hold on as long as possible in hopes that your team can bring out the dubski. Now in this first match, spoiler alert, doesn't quite work out for us. But it doesn't mean you can't have a great game. Despite all of the odds that we're going to go up against in this one, it's gonna turn into a crazy game. Now, I make some mistakes in this, and we're gonna point those out pretty early on. So right off the bat, we are going to push off to the right side. You know me, win your side, and then work together. Get those crossfires, and that helps the team, right? Now, part of that strategy involves your team able to win their side or potentially hold their side and allow you to wrap around for them or them to wrap around for you. Now, in this situation, we're going to go up against overwhelming odds. And we're going to be put into a situation where it's basically us versus the world. And we got to try to hold on as long as possible. Now, I'm not a stranger to these situations. First shot out on that shores, he gets turned away, unfortunately. But you can see we have a Kansas pushing over here. We have an Iowa pushing straight ahead. We've got the shores turning away. And we've got a couple of guys out in the distance, namely a couple of Scharnhorst. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I do not pay attention to what these Scharnhorsts are doing. Now, you can see they are clearly running away. Now, I go ahead and take a shot early on for these Scharnhorst. Now, not noting which direction these Scharnhorst end up going long term ends up costing me. Again, we take a shot at a guy that's angled away, running away. Could have waited and took a shot at this Iowa here, but we didn't. And now we don't have our guns loaded. He's full broadside. We should have held that shot. And that's something that I need to do better at personally, is paying attention to what's going on and not just immediately firing my guns every time I get loaded. Now, that Iowa goes broadside. He gets absolutely annihilated for his troubles, and then we come in and get the cleanup kill because reasons. Now, look at the map. We have a battleship who is just doing the exact same thing that the Iowa just did, which is overextending, pushing straight into the middle of the map, and then for whatever reason deciding it's a great idea to turn broadside. I don't understand that thought process. Like, if you overextend and you put yourself in that position, the last thing that you want to do is turn broadside so that everybody that's there that can you over gets the easiest shot possible. Like, that's just not what you want. So right off the bat, both teams down a battleship. Right off the rip. Two good high-tier battleships. Gone. Iowa, Brandenburg, gone. Now, Kansas is doing the same thing that the Iowa just did, which is turning broadside, getting blapped for all of his health, and now I'm in a position to help with him. He's also being shot and burned down. So the Kansas is in a long, bad way. However, look at the Scharnhorst. Where are their Scharnhorst? Well, you got one Scharnhorst who's broadside to me. And I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to figure out how that's going to go. Broadside to a Kansas inside medium range? That's a recipe for disaster. And this is a recipe for getting everybody's attention. When you blap the crap out of somebody for half their hit points, you are guaranteed to get that man's attention. From there on out. Alright? Kansas has turned back around to try to potentially help his Scharnhorst. I am paying sole attention to the fact that there's a Scharnhorst and a Kansas in the middle of the map. I am not paying attention to the fact that there is a Scharnhorst coming towards me from the right side of the map. Now, I know he's there. I know he exists. I am not paying attention to the fact that he's closing the distance. Now, Scharnhorst takes a shot at me. I'm not too particularly worried about his 283s. Kansas, with his 406s, we've already demonstrated how nasty those can be. So we're trying to get rid of the Kansas as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, I am closing the distance to two Scharnhorsts. Now, I don't think you guys need to be a rocket scientist to figure out why closing the distance to 2 Scharnhorst is a bad idea. Now that Kansas absolutely makes me pay for not removing him on the last salvo, and then he immediately turns broadside to my team and gives me a slight angle, so I go for superstructure hit. Now, recognizing where I have screwed up, we do manage to take out the Kansas, which is huge. No more huge hits from them, but now recognizing where I screwed up, I am stuck between 2 Scharnhorsts. Now, Scharnhorsts, why are they so scary for most battleships? Especially a solo battleship. Their survivability is second to really none. Even the regular battleship line for the Germans doesn't seem to take hits as well as the Scharnhorst does. Scharnhorst, for whatever reason, just refuses to die a lot of times. And when you couple that with the fact that you've got 2 of them, and they both have torpedoes, and they are both coming right at you. Well, obviously we turned one of them away, and now we're turning our guns to attack the other one, who is clearly rushing us with torpedoes. Now, everybody knows that the German well, if not everybody, but you should know, or you should learn, that the German torpedoes have a maximum range of 6 kilometers with most builds. So, trying to maintain at least 6 kilometers is a must. We're currently 4.7 kilometers from that Scharnhorst, which means we have to be on guard. We know that he's capable of torping us. So every time that he opens up his angle to like get more guns on target, we gotta assume that torpedoes are on their way as well. We go ahead, we pop another heel, and you can see he is bow into us. We're angled relatively well. This guy's using armor piercing, the other guy's using HE. They got secondaries rolling, and this guy is rushing me with torpedoes. Now, you can see we're getting very unfavorable shots against this Scharnhorst, and this is what I'm talking about. It sits so low in the water that it does allow you to struggle at times to get those penetrations. Now, I overmatched the bow of a Scharnhorst. However, he also, I believe, has an icebreaker like most German battleships, so you can't aim at the waterline, you gotta aim high. When you got a ship that is as small as the battleship Scharnhorst, it can be difficult to get those shots. Now, obviously, he opens the angle. Why would he do this, folks? Why would he open the angle right there in a last-ditch effort before he knows that he's about to die? Well, it's pretty obvious. He trying to torp us, right? Pretty friggin' obvious. So we're going to try to change what we're doing to make sure we avoid the torpedoes if they're coming. And then we're also going to try to angle against the guy who has switched over to armor piercing in the other Scharnhorst. Now, we have 4,500 hit points, and those hit points aren't going to last very long if we aren't angled. So we get a nice shot with the rear guns. You can see I'm doing my best to try to keep all of my firepower cycling. At this point, I don't have long to live. 7 seconds and I get another heal off. My last heal. Are we going to survive? It's close. Yes, we do manage to survive. We are going to proc a heal, and that is going to allow us, to just barely survive that hit and allow us to continue this harassing of the Scharnhorst. Now, obviously, as you can see, the game did not turn out in my team's favor. And this is okay. It happens occasionally. But that doesn't mean that you give up, and it doesn't mean that you, even against overwhelming odds, just stop playing. A lot of people I see do this. Now, look, we just survived with another 190 hit points. We get another shot off. Of course we're going to die here. But we smashed that man again, and we finished the round with 163,000 damage done and 3 kills. It's just unfortunate that we let ourselves get into a position where we were pinched between 2 German pocket battleships in the Scharnhorsts. If we hadn't done that, if we hadn't taken that huge hit from the Kansas, then we probably win this match. Because I can guarantee that I get turned around to at least deal with the cruisers. Obviously, they still have a destroyer, but if I can get rid of the cruisers, that would be huge. But as you can see, our aircraft carrier going after the cruiser Wichita, landing some serious damage on the Wichita, and unfortunately, I don't know, is he going to be able to finish him before the Wichita is able to kill him? He's got 14,000 hit points. Wichita's loaded AP, so you know he's going to be trying to kill. Like, this guy understands what he needs to do the damage here, but he's shooting too far forward. If you're in the Wichita in this situation, you want to aim midship or just in front of midship for the American carriers to get that citadel. But unfortunately, carrier goes down. That's the end of the game. We did everything we could. 1,336 base XP, top of the leaderboard on our team. But you're not going to win every game. It's not even the best players in this game are 100% win rates. They may have a higher win rate than you and I, but they're not 100%. Nobody is. Now, with that being said, we're going to get on Trident. And we're in the Kansas again. And so we're going to get ourselves into a very similar sort of situation. We do have a little bit more help in this one, but we are also against, again, overwhelming odds on our side of the map. And we have to play smart in order to give our team a chance. Now, a lot of times, I don't play to survive. And that's one thing that I've told people a lot. Like, if you play like I do, you're probably not going to survive the majority of the matches. First shot out, 5 full pins, 16,000 damage on a Duke of York. Tier 6, King George class battleship, just not very good at taking hits at range. Surprisingly, the closer he gets, the more tanky he's going to be, but unfortunately for him, it doesn't matter because I overmatch him and we'll just annihilate him no matter what he does. But going broadside is a guarantee that you're not going to live to survive long enough to be tanky. Because Kansas doesn't care who is broadside. It just annihilates everything. That's just the way Kansas is. And that's why I say Kansas is definitely the best Tier 7 battleship. It just is. Despite it being slow, it can take a substantial amount of punishment if you angle properly, as we just showcased in the last match. And on top of that, you can also just dish out so much punishment per salvo. And they are so accurate. Every shot that you take on a Kansas is freaking railguns. Look at this. Just look at that. We fired our guns 3 times, and we have, what? How many hits we got? 22 hits in 3 salvo. That's not bad. And we got 50,000 damage. And we haven't even citadeled anything. That's not bad. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of destroyers in this match, and 3 out of the 4 are spotted on our side of the map. So we have to be careful. Now, obviously, when they're spotted, we try to take shots at them. Our battleship, for whatever reason, in an Iowa, has decided to rush smoke screens where he's seen 3 destroyers. This is not an ideal situation. However, I am trying to help him. He's got 2 destroyers with him that can potentially help him. Unfortunately, we lose our Moss, and they lose their destroyer. But we've lost 2 destroyers. They've lost 1 destroyer. Now, destroyers, I always say, decide who wins and who loses in a match. Good destroyer play can carry even really bad teams. However, bad destroyer player can absolutely annihilate even the best teams. Okay? I don't know if you guys have ever seen like any sort of stream with any of the super unis like the Peak and the Aaron, Chili Games, all these guys. If they play their normal stuff, usually you'll see like Aaron in a cruiser and Peak in a battleship and that sort of things. That way they have the heavy hit. They also have the DPM. They have that utility aspect. So there's a lot to it. However, if they don't have a destroyer in their division and they have to rely on green destroyer players, holy mother of God, is that a recipe for disaster. You cannot rely on destroyer players that don't know what they're doing, because they will absolutely annihilate your chances of winning the game if they are not doing the right things. If they capture the bases at minimum, like if you just capture bases, like you give your chance a huge chance of winning. Like, for real. As a destroyer player, if you capture bases and that's all you do, you at least give your team a chance to win the match. And a pretty good one at that. You increase your team's chances of winning by a lot, just by capturing bases. There we get a nice shot over the island. You saw us, we had him lined up initially. That's why we trusted the auto-aim there to keep us on target as he reversed behind the island. And then we scored the Citadel. We're already over 100,000 damage. All right, that just should show you just how nasty this game has been already. And there's another full health Massachusetts out here, so we're going to go ahead and start working on him also. Now, our Iowa, to his credit, despite playing like an absolute lunatic and charging 3 destroyers, has managed to survive a long time. However, then he decides to go broadside to 2 Massachusetts, and I mean, not just that, he also has the destroyers out there that we already mentioned. And so, I mean, what do you expect to happen here? Now, I have decided to come in and try to help, and now that I've pushed in, I'm kind of stuck here. Okay? Kansas doesn't have the ability to really disengage like a lot of battleships, and that's why a lot of people just don't like the Kansas. It's slow, and it's bulky, so disengaging isn't really something that you can particularly do well. However, if we can give, and the reason I'm opening up here, I'm trying to turn and get my guns ready for this destroyer who's charging this. You can see him right there. He's less than half health. He should be an easy kill for me. He's in the Vauxhall and he has no smoke screen. He's already spotted, so this guy is going to die. Like, there is no chance that he survives my next shot. Unless, of course, I just completely whiff like an idiot. Fortunately, I didn't. So that takes down one of their remaining destroyers, and they have 2 of them left. And they are both in range to annihilate us. Now, I have decided to be broadside to Massachusetts, and we don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out why that's a bad idea. But rather than stay there, you can see I did slow down, I did turn in to avoid the torpedoes from the Vauxhall. It was pretty obvious what he was going to do. One of their Massachusetts is not looking at us, the other one is kind of looking at us, but we also have a destroyer opening fire at him in open water. So the Massachusetts that is shooting at us is taking his time to figure out what he wants to do. Now, obviously, changing course again, we're able to dodge the torpedoes from the Utiloy, and I'm in a position where I want to shoot the guy that can hurt me the easiest, which is the Massachusetts. But I also know that getting rid of destroyers is a huge deal. So rather than shoot at the Massachusetts here, we go ahead and start looking at potentially taking out the Utiloy. And of course, as soon as we get our guns into a position where we can actually do damage, that's where the Utiloy just disappears. Fortunately, he's sending widespread torpedoes, and those are never going to hit. Like, if you've got, like, country-sized gaps in between your torpedoes by the time they get to the enemy, you're not hitting anything. I mean, I was literally, worst-case scenario, broadside on to where he torped, and you saw the size of the gap. Like, if you're at longer ranges, you do not want to shoot wide spreads because the gap between the torpedoes just get too big. And here we're running into issues where we're getting guns broken like nonstop. And this is an incredibly frustrating aspect as a battleship captain. And we're also being gunned down by destroyers. Now look at my destroyer player. We've had that Charlie cap for how long? He could easily be out here helping me with these destroyers by spotting and doing good things. But he's not. He's not even firing his guns. He's smoked up for no reason. There's nothing there to spot him. But he smoked up, and then he launched torpedoes at the Massachusetts. This does 2 things. This, A, tells the Massachusetts, hey, I'm over here, watch for torpedoes in this direction. And B, it just doesn't make any freaking sense. If you're going to just torp, you're not getting spotted when you torp. So why are you smoking up when you have no chance of being spotted just to torpedo? That makes no sense whatsoever. Now here we've got our guns back finally. This Massachusetts is firing HE at us, so we're not too worried about that. We go ahead and we start trying to rake his superstructure. Obviously we get double fired. This guy is within will to rebuild of us, so if we need it, he's there. I say, with tongue in cheek. But you can see we are constantly being shot at by the destroyers. This guy comes over to smoke us up. Now there's 2 problems with that. First of all, that assumes that I am, A, not going to fire my guns, as I get a gun destroyed, which is really unfortunate. Battleships cannot stay unspotted in smokescreens unless we don't fire the guns. Now you can see, I'm clearly saying that I need support from that destroyer. Him dropping a smoke screen didn't help us a whole lot. And now I've got this Massachusetts. I mean, it did help the fact that we were able to extinguish the fires. We get a little bit of a rest and respite from that. We go forward because obviously smoke screens, we know there's a destroyer nearby. He's in the Charlie cap. We know that there's a battleship charging us. We know there's a destroyer out to our right. We don't want to sit in the smoke screen for very long. So the smoke screen did help us a little bit, allowed us to get the drop on the Massachusetts while he was spotted, but we need this lightning to help us with the destroyer problem. Now, we take another good hit at the Massachusetts here, and so we look to be winning this fight. This is not something that I'm particularly worried about. But then the Z starts shooting from the left, and we also have the Utiloy on my right somewhere. So we know there's multiple destroyers out here. We're in a situation where we're being crossfired. If that Z actually started loading AP, we'd be in a lot more trouble. Now here, I choose to go after the Massachusetts, A, to get rid of his guns, and B, to get rid of his secondaries so that our freaking destroyer can move around and do what he needs to do. Now, I'm caught between two destroyers. I have 10,000 hit points, and the one guy that could have done anything other than just sail around the backside of the island and helped out there is nowhere to be found. So I have no will to rebuild to keep me alive. I am able to effectively dodge against these destroyers, but unfortunately we take one torpedo, and that's going to do it for us. If we had will to rebuild, we survived that torpedo. German torpedoes are notorious for not being that damaging. So if our little will to rebuild buddy had stayed close, and you can see he dropped another smoke screen back there in the back. I honestly don't know what this guy's thought was. I don't know if maybe he was smoking up and firing his guns at the Massachusetts. I know he's not in range to shoot at the destroyers, but yeah. Now he's going to charge into the cap. The enemy has grabbed our cap and then moved into the Bravo cap. So he's going to be able to come in and grab this cap free of charge. And again, this is where this destroyer, even if all he does in this match is grab bases, gives our team a better chance to win the match. Okay? He did drop me a nice little smoke screen, and it did help us initially, but most of the time, smoke screens for battleships are not going to help. In that situation, I utilized that to get all of my guns loaded, ready, so that when I did lash out at the Massachusetts, I had all guns ready to go, and I get the drop on him. And so, if the person that you're smoking up knows about that, then great. Otherwise, most of the time, a battleship, when you smoke them up, they're just going to stay spotted all the time because they are constantly firing their guns. And our smoke detection range on battleships is so bad. So keep that in mind if you do decide to try to utilize smokescreen to help out a battleship. Most of the time, it's not a good idea just because it's just not going to do you any good. However, the Lightning doing a decent job here, getting the base cap just in time as the Z-23 comes around the corner. Now, this is where this guy needs to recognize that he can use AP against the Z. The Z is pretty decently armored. He could have used AP, and, you know, British AP is nasty, especially in the destroyer. But British AP is nasty. He could have used AP against that Z and absolutely annihilated it. But he doesn't. He manages to slip away. The Z did loop back around, and now we're giving up the base again. But again, because the Z left the center cap, he left our battleship and destroyer in the center to come back over to fight the Lightning, who was grabbing the Charlie cap. So just keeping these guys moving around is not allowing them to do what they need to do. Utiloy kills one of our destroyers, which leaves us just the Lightning. The Z actually puts himself in a great position to kill this Lightning, but unfortunately starts going just far enough forward that he catches the island there and doesn't finish off the Lightning. Our team has an advantage in points solely due to the fact that we have had caps, multiple caps, the entire game. Our team won the A side. Our team held on the Charlie side for as long as possible, thanks to, you know, me trying to stay alive for as long as possible. We got rid of the battleships, which are the high priority, high value targets in terms of points, to make sure that you are swinging as many points as possible before you die. And then we've managed to take most of the health off the destroyers to the point where the destroyers, they don't have enough hit points to be reckless late game. This Z needed to be a little bit more reckless here. Sure, it's probably not going to end in your favor. However, grabbing that Charlie cap did nothing for your team. He did manage to kill the freaking destroyer, the Lightning, and now he's coming forward last possible second to come after this Massachusetts. Of course, Massachusetts has HE loaded, somehow manages to miss at 5 kilometers most of his shells, but the secondaries of the Massachusetts we've already talked about are disgusting, and it's just a matter of time before these secondaries find their mark. Massachusetts also very good at turning, and you can tell that this is not your standard Massachusetts secondary build because these secondaries aren't hitting crap. He literally only hit 2 secondaries. I say 2. I looked up and I saw my 2. But his secondaries did not hit that Z, I don't think. Except maybe the first salvo. But we end up holding on to win. Massachusetts gets a hike out, so he did plenty. I'm not disparaging against him there. But the Lightning could have been a little bit more useful for me in that one. But at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, good destroyer play, even if all you do is capture bases, can give your team the best possible chance at winning a match. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. As much as we always want the will to rebuild, we want to be able to stay in the fight and do everything, sometimes having that guy that just grabs bases and that's all he does is a godsend and gives your team the best possible chance to win the match. So if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.